opportunity to reflect on that and take it to another degree of what was the future and what they set up for us as far as what are we're the remnants of funk music and how we take it to the future. So they really set up a certain situation as far as just visually and with their expression.
Did you see the Mothership Land?
I didn't see the Mothership Land, but I always would have loved. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. You know, I've only seen it on internet, but I would have loved to have seen it.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up between Atlanta, Georgia, Ohio, and Florida.
Oh, where in Ohio?
Cincinnati. I spent a lot of time. My summers were always usually in Ohio, so obviously there was a huge popularity for the Ohio players and the groups there, Bootsy and all that, and those were the summer type grooves, you know.
It's funny, but what you since you were in Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
did you realize there was so many bands coming out of that area?
Had no idea. I mean, especially at that time, it was just like I thought it was normal that so many bands, they just were popping out of everywhere. I didn't even realize at the time, like being in Ohio and in those summers, you know, just how impactful these people. Wasn't Roger from Ohio too?
Dayton.
Dayton. There you go. Just back-to-back bands. So I think it was a great time. But again, we're talking about at a very specific time when in the social dynamic as well, you know, where things were just in a different place. And maybe there was a lot more expression, you know, for groups in that era. I think as well, the interesting thing also, as kids used to do originally when they were in the South, they'd always go north for the summer. And the kids in the north would always come south for the summer. So those influences at that time that was a part of that dynamic, I mean, it really kind of, maybe that has a lot to do with also, you know, why music has been really important to me or why I've chosen to do it in this way. I really don't know. I haven't even given that any thought, actually.
Talk about now. The Brand New Heavies. You guys came together in London, didn't you?
We came together in Los Angeles. Actually, I was living in Los Angeles, and I had lived there for a long time. And I moved to London after connecting with them through a Los Angeles-based record label called Delicious Vinyl Records, which was also from the club culture, the DJs of that particular club at that time, which developed a record label, which also was linked to an art community and a musical community, just a kind of a mashup of all types of people that were from punk, that were from hip hop, all of that stuff. And I think at that time too, they were really strong fans of the funk and didn't want to necessarily go the traditional record label route. And even for their choices of who they had on the label, it sort of represented the types of people that were, you know, asked to be a part of it.
I so forgot you guys that band was on Delicious Vinyl.
Yeah.
That's so trippy.
And it was trippy.
And it's interesting. Oh, don't want to jump ahead.
Okay. I was going to say too, but also in the UK, this is the interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. There was a separate, because it was licensed to Delicious Vinyl, there was a separate record deal in the UK and the rest of the world, which had a completely, like, different other albums were released there that weren't released here, or different, you know what I mean? There were a lot of different things going on, but they as well came from club culture, acid jazz, and you know, were Talking Loud, the Giles Petersons, the Eddie Pillars, and these people also huge musical fans and contributors, you know, and they were DJs and still are now, and started record labels. And you know,
what's interesting, the UK and global market in general, but certainly the UK, has always been a big, huge, you know, market for black music.
Oh,
and appreciators of it in some ways, in ways that Americans aren't.
Absolutely.
So the Heavies then represented kind of, it was a nouveau, neo funky, neo funk, whatever. You guys were, when you came out, it really surprised people, because even it was the height of hip hop.
Right.
And there's these people playing and singing.
Right. Well, I mean, it's so hard to mirror yourself, but just off the reaction of the types of things that we would experience, when we would be flying from England, coming to New York, spending time in the U.S. or popping wherever we'd be jumping around to in the globe at the time. The hip hop base was it was so unique for us because again, I kind of look at hip hop music as we all do because we are the jewels of like where after this music was created, after hip hop started, being extremely accepted worldwide and well loved, you know, for a minute there, people didn't really know where to place us because we had this identity and this kinship with our comrades in hip hop. We had like jazz musicians as well that could identify with us. We had people in pop music that could identify with us. However, I think that everywhere there was a linkage, whereas we kind of represented what was an unspokenness of a subculture. At the same time, we represented what was pop music as well. So those were like also like a meeting other people, in hip hop. Those were like that felt like family to us because we had a voice of someone that was giving us beats and we could all enjoy what was done previously by people that had rare grooves, rare records, and different things. We had all that same appreciation for coming from that same place, and I think that's what tied us quite closely.
I mean, like you were one of the only bands. So you were guys were making records. They were like the records that were being sampled by the artists.
Right.
So you had a neat because you actually were living, breathing what people were kind of archiving for.
Right. Right. I think too there was a cutoff point where it seemed like instrumentation, like people they didn't care about playing live anymore, and it was just at this point. I guess I don't know if it was. I don't know if it had something to do with dance music starting to take more of.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Can we get those? Could you open the door and see if they could get those people to close their door?
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent the wrong person.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
it.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's like. Is that cool?
Thank you.
Cool. What
Well,
was I saying?
Well, just in fact, what was interesting. I mean, you guys had a global reach with a band at a time when there were actually very few
Right.
bands playing this music and getting on the radio. I mean, it was so.
Oh, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a disconnect. It seemed to have been a certain point in music where, especially in the '80s, I guess, there was all, people were so excited and, enthusiastic about like getting digital keyboards and 808 drums and stuff like that. That I think there was a slight disconnect from the period where people were interested in playing their instruments again. And this was where the point was that funk, it didn't completely get cut off at that point, but it seemed like there was some sort of gray area where funk musicians and, people weren't as, I don't know, they kind of tuned out or something for a minute. At the same time, still loving funk music, but it just seems to, and this is the only way, whereas I think, MCs and, different artists in hip hop, as well as people, that appreciate the funk, this is why probably we could hold, we could shake hands on that. We can confirm on that, and why probably people did respond well to us, because people forgot about it. They left it dormant a little bit, I think. And it was a pleasure, I think, for people to get to hear a little bit more of that. And at the time, this is what seemed to have worked in our favor, as well as in hip-hop's favor,
You travel around the world now.
Yeah.
With Heavies and your other different collaborators. You're a global artist.
Thank you.
Where do you see when you see but it sounds like funk has traveled around the globe, and then it reaches different audiences, and then it morphs to fit what that regional artist is interested in. Do you find that to be true, that you find funk, but you find it in different forms today?
You do find it in different forms, but I think that, there's a certain caliber or whatever the goal is. There's a certain sort of things to water down the funk too.
Mm.
And I think that, when it becomes so homogenized like that, a lot of information kind of gets cut off at the pass. When we go to places like, when we go to a place like Korea or Japan or something like that, it's a very, very hard push away, almost drastically away from the funk in order to promote more like J-pop or K-pop or, but that's a very, very commercial thing. However, without the subculture, without the voice, without people just sharing information word of mouth, this is why funk music hasn't gone anywhere really, and why there's always the possibility of it growing monster legs and a big head again,
Yeah, I want to talk a bit more about singing, because you're such a great singer, and
Thank you.
this whole thing with funk singing, it's like there are these discernible things that people, even persons who don't know, they go, yow, and everyone's, oh yeah, yeah. There's about 5 records. What do you think yow comes from?
Well, maybe I'm wondering. I think Sugarfoot from Ohio Players would have to he should have patented that term, because it seems like that may have been my first time ever hearing "ow" and done, because it's almost like a sexy sort of thing too. It's like a lot of different things that yow is like. Yeah, ow, bring me that back beat. It has something to do with bringing it back. I don't know. He just should have